be careful. This bubble right now is a bigger bubble than 2008. This is the everything bubble. This is going to be the biggest crash in world history. And the good thing about being older is you have some history behind you. Is you have a football stadium and it starts to fill up with water, one drop at a time. When do the people in the stands find out it's too late?
That magic eyedropper that you squeeze out one drop and it doubles in size every minute. It's something like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
The point at which the people can see the field beginning to fill up with water and notice that there's going to be a problem, I think it's at 45 minutes, so only 5 minutes to go, that just the infield is covered by like 3 feet of water. And you go from just being able to see a little of it to the entire thing being filled up in just 5 minutes. And the whole point of that is with exponential functions, like so many of the problems we face are, by the time you can actually see the problem, it's way too late to actually avoid it. At that point, your choices are really just about how you're going to manage this thing that's about to slam into you.
So being the old guys, like the story is always the same. What's her name? Kathy
Wood from ARC.
They all say the same thing. This time it's different. This is the new economy. How many minutes are left?
In terms of things like when we're going to have to really deal with the repercussions of the tremendous and excessive amount of debts that we built up in the system that are basically, we pulled so much of tomorrow's prosperity into today, stealing it from future generations. We've been trying to avoid those repercussions over the past many decades by money printing and kicking the can as far as we can financially. I honestly think we're in those final 5 minutes. I think we can certainly see the infield is filling up with water. I would say it's more than 3 feet deep at this point. Now, is it going to be 2 years or 10 years? It's probably going to be, I would say, maybe a little closer to 10 than 2, but it could be anywhere in that window. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is going to be a default on our obligations. And the question is are we going to default because we're going to stand back and let the debts collapse, which was sort of the deflationary austerity side of things? Or are we going to inflate our way out by just printing so much money to meet the debt obligations, we just kill the currency? And if you had to force me to choose between one of those two, I would pick the latter. I think politically, inflating is always the more preferential way, even though you get to the same destination at the end.
Right. So again, there's an advantage of getting older, is all I'm saying. And Jim Rickards and I were just laughing our butts off, going, we've heard all this before, but we were down to the last 4 minutes. And the question is, are you going to keep doing the same thing? I think that's our question today. But I'll give somebody else some other ideas how bad this is and why being old might be better, is that we are just coming out of the longest bull run in history, 11 years. Started in 2011. And at 2011, I made the biggest fortunes of my life because that was the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and the CDO crashes, the real estate crashed. And I backed up the truck and I borrowed $300 million to buy the best real estate all across the Southwest. I'm watching all these young guys. They entered the longest bull market in history. They were walking around in diapers in 2008, and now they're on YouTube with their channels, and they're talking about this, they're talking about that. They've never seen a crash. And this is going to be the biggest crash in world history. And these guys are giving advice. So it's my way of saying to your audience, find out how old they were when they were wearing diapers. And be careful who you're taking advice from. How old are they? Because this is the longest bull market in history. I look at some of these young kids, and I own some Bitcoin, I own some Ethereum, but they're all saying the same thing. This time it's different, and Bitcoin's crashed. The Federal Reserve Bank, I can't believe that. I mean, people say, don't fight the Fed and all this. Well, my question to everybody is this: can the Fed print oil? Can the Fed print gasoline? Can it print food? But everybody sits there and they've been brainwashed by Wall Street to go, do as the Fed tells you to do. Well, you gotta be kidding me. Those guys are the three stooges, Janet Yellen, Biden, and Powell. You gotta be kidding me. Why would you listen to them?
Just like they eventually created the inflation they were looking for, but just got way too much of it, I think they're gonna get the same demand destruction they're looking for, just way too much of it again.
Do you find yourself with a substantial amount of cash that's currently idle and not generating returns? It's high time you explore the trading app I've recently started using, Moomoo. It now offers an impressive 5.1% APY, plus an extra 3% APY for your uninvested cash. You have to know that 8.1% APY is 17 times the national average savings account interest rate, and there's no minimum deposit limit for cash sweeps. This is one of the highest interest rates I know of. Why I love Moomoo is it stands out by offering zero commissions and no platform fees for stocks, options, and ETFs. It's packed with powerful market analysis features for absolutely free. For example, now is the U.S. stock market earnings season. Financial data, analyst ratings, earnings calendar, and more are all free to use. The 6.8% margin rate is one of the lowest I've come across. You can tap into pro-level tools and information absolutely free. Sign up using my link below and grab up to 15 free stocks and park your idle funds on Moomoo for a sweet 5.1% APY plus 3% APY extra. Or earn up to $5,000 in cash rewards when you transfer assets to Moomoo.
The biggest thing out of being old, because I remember Volcker saying it's going to crush, so he raised interest rates, right? So Powell is now channeling the spirit of Volcker. And when Volcker crushed inflation, debt to GDP was 30%. And today it's 125% if you believe the numbers. So if he channels Volcker, and the other thing about history will tell you this, there's never been a soft landing. It's more Fed talk. I'm just saying, be careful the age of the person you're listening to, because most of these guys on YouTube today were in diapers in 2008. In this market crash, I've made more money in the last 3 years in my whole life. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, is that there's other ways of looking at investing, but to think that Powell is going to save you, when, as you may know, the reverse repo market is running at $2 trillion a day today.
Right.
$2 trillion a day, and people are listening to Powell? You got to be kidding me. And look at Janet Yellen. Oh my God. I own no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I do not touch paper. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying people have been brainwashed by the Fed, the Treasury. Go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, get a high-paying job, and invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. It was in 1974 when I came back from Vietnam, a two-tour Marine helicopter pilot. I saw communism at work. It was not pretty. And I come back in 1974, they passed ERISA. ERISA stands for 401k right now, or IRA. And I went, oh my God, they're funneling my generation, the boomers, into the stock market. And they don't know anything about money. And in 1974, the biggest exodus was school teachers suddenly becoming financial planners. I watched it in horror. That's the poor leading the blind. And today we have baby boomers who are hoping the stock market stays up in their 401k just as Social Security goes bust. You think that's an accident? That's all I'm saying. I'm just a Marine. I'm a dumbass Marine lieutenant, flew the gunship, went down 3 times. But today I listen to this bullshit and I go, oh my God, how can we be that stupid? Because we went to school, we did as we're told. Don't fight the Fed. Do as the Fed tells you. Invest for the long term, a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. And don't worry, Powell is now channeling Volcker. When the debt to GDP is 120%, you got to be kidding me. So when they were dropping the interest rates, I thought I went to heaven, because I buy apartment houses. I own 13,000 apartment houses. Every time the Fed dropped the interest rates, it jacked the value of my properties up, but I also improved the properties and I refinance out. So today I own no money in any of my properties. 13,000 units, all throwing cash. Cash flow, positive. It's also called an infinite return. And I got hammered by the New York Times because Rich Dad never went to school, but my poor dad was a PhD, who stood for poor, helpless, and desperate. He was in charge of labor unions. He was pro-tax. He was pro-tax to rich. Sounds like ALC to me. Do you know what I mean? I'm listening to this and going, my family, oh my God. So in 1965, I leave Hawaii, where I went to school. I go to school in New York, and my economics teacher is a West Point graduate who flew B-17s in World War II. And instead of having us read Malthus and Ricardo, he had us read Marx, Stalin, and Mao. And the theory at military school is know your enemy. So I understand Marx fairly well, the Communist Manifesto, 1848. That was 1965, 1966 was my first trip to Vietnam. I'm carrying bombs to Vietnam on a victory ship sailing out of San Francisco Harbor. And then I saw communism firsthand. I went, oh my God, I could see the future. We're eventually overrun by communists. And so in 1930, the Frankfurt School out of Germany, which is Marx's institution, sent teachers to Columbia University's Teachers College in 1930. That was stage 1 of communism. And then they had to influence our academics first. And I lost so many friends, and we're all Marine. The saddest days of my life is standing on the deck of my aircraft carrier, and my friends don't come back. You never see them again. Their aircrafts are shot down. They're still MIA. And I get spit on, hit by eggs and all this stuff. But that woke me up, so I started studying more. What is happening in America? So as I said, I use debt now to get rich, and then I invest in hard assets. So that's what we can talk about. My point of view here is, ladies and gentlemen, I would question what you've been taught from school. That's all I'm saying. In a bull market, even idiots feel smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best sayings I've ever heard, because I'm listening to all these idiots, after 2011, the market crashed in '08 because the repo market went bad. And the repo market is the credit of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns was bad. So they hammered, it's a long story. My friends are all inside that world. But then when it came back out, they just started pumping money. And what they did was they kept printing more money to save a bad economy. It was already crashing again in 2011, but they kept printing money. And today we're going to pay that price.
They are beginning to bump into some sort of immovable limits here. And again, we'll find out pretty soon whether that prediction is right or not.
I use debt because debt is tax-free money. What I did was I rehabbed my apartment, 13,000 of them. I just kept buying more with the cash flow, and I'd refinance out as interest rates dropped. So I'm in good shape now. Then I took them, set all interest rates right now. So I use debt. I don't flip houses. Remember all those guys who were flipping?
Everybody flipped.
No, they were stupid. When the moment you flip, you have a tax consequence. I never flip. I finance out. That's tax-free money. And not only that, is when I started investing, I had to invest at 12% interest rates. And that's why I said being an old guy has its advantages, because these guys are crying the blues at 5%? Oh, give me a break. You move to Gilligan's Island and play the ukulele or something, you know what I mean? Because every time I borrow more money to float my properties, there's 3 types of tax breaks. I got appreciation, depreciation, and amortization. So I zero out. So my cost of money is, my tax on debt is 0, but I don't have any plans on going to jail and dancing the hula for some guy. You know what I mean? I'd rather stay out of jail and make money. So let's say I make $1 million. I have to buy a $4 million apartment house. Then appreciation, depreciation, amortization wipes out my income from my business. The Fed cannot print beef. So I started, when Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline off, my oil I was selling from the ground, which is a tax break also, went from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel. Today it's like $120. Oh my God, this guy Biden is going to bankrupt us. I'm not saying him, but there's somebody who wants to bankrupt, because oil is the lifeblood of civilization. I worked for Standard Oil of California as a tanker officer when I graduated from school. I understand oil. I was on the Alaska pipeline and all this. I'm like, he's screwing us. So when he raises inflation, the poor and middle class will go broke. And that was just done as soon as he was being done before he took office. And so I'm looking at this guy's going to sell America down the drain. I'm not saying it's him, but somebody wants us to go broke. And I'm watching this going, oh my God, so what else can so I have oil wells. I get tax breaks for those because I don't invest in oil stocks. I work for Standard Oil, but I don't invest in Standard Oil. I invest in the oil in the ground. I'm a wildcatter. Everybody says don't do it. I don't recommend it, but I like doing it. Gold mines don't do it. I like doing it. But the biggest thing of all is food. And so my friend was a school system in California. He had to run from California because he got tired of being in the People's Republic of California. So he moved to Wyoming and bought this huge ranch. And he says, oh my God, I never knew there was so much money in Wagyu cattle. I went, what? So I was up in Wyoming inspecting this Wagyu bull. And the good thing about it, it's a real Japanese Wagyu bull. There's American Wagyu bulls and Japanese Wagyu bulls. But for some reason, you know how brands are, Wagyu is a brand like Ford or Chevy, Wagyu beef. So I stood up on stage the other day. I said, well, I've always wanted to be a Japanese breeding bull, but I bought a bull instead of, nobody laughed. Every time that bull has, you know what I'm talking about, a breeding bull, I don't want to own the cattle. I just want to own the semen. There's more opportunity today than ever before, but not if you've been brainwashed into going to school, getting a job, paying taxes, live debt-free, and invest in the stock market. You know, this bubble right now is a bigger bubble than 2008. This is the everything bubble. It's going to be not only stocks, bonds, but also credit. But it's more opportunity is going to come out of it. And that's what I'm saying. Be careful who you listen to, because your best asset, but also your biggest liability, are the ideas in your head. And be careful who puts them there.
Sign up using my link below and grab up to 15 free stocks and park your idle funds on Moomoo for a sweet 5.1% APY plus 3% APY extra. Or earn up to $5,000 in cash rewards when you transfer assets to Moomoo. Assets to Moomoo. Assets.
America's in serious, serious trouble. These are not normal times. We're going in for a rough ride. It's a very trying time throughout the world economy. China's in trouble, Germany's in trouble, America's in trouble. And that's my concern. The great battle on the planet Earth is Marxism versus capitalism. In 1965, I was 17 years old. I went to school in New York. I went to military school. And my economics teacher had us read the Communist Manifesto by Marx. That was pretty radical, you know what I mean, to a school teaching Marxism. But rather than study Keynes and Malthus and all this, he had us read Marx. And I realized most school teachers, like my poor dad, are Marxists. Not bad people, don't get me wrong. It's like a religion. And as you know, what Marx said was the abolition of private property was the #1 goal. And to this guy, Klaus Schwab out of Austria, wherever he's at, he says, someday you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. That's what's going on the planet. And a lot of people subscribe to that. So my poor dad was a Marxist. Number 2 was that workers of the world unite. My poor dad was head of the labor union, teachers union. Today, the biggest union in America, teachers unions. And that's why we had no financial education in our school. The third thing was a graduating income tax was essential for the spread of communism. We were taxed to death now. And America was founded as a tax-free nation. In 1773, we had the Boston Tea Party to kick the bloody English out. But what happened in 1773, the bankers control the world. Like it or not, they control the world.
And they still do.
Yes, exactly.
Banks are smarter than everyone gives them credit for. They have smarter people than everyone gives them credit for.
My poor dad was head of education for the state of Hawaii. Very smart man, good man, big-hearted. But when I read Communist Manifesto in 65, I went, he's a Marxist. Abolition of private property, hated the rich, liked taxes, labor unions. And that's a free country. You can think what you want. And my rich dad was my best friend's father, capitalist. So I had both capitalist education and a Marxist education. So I went to military school to learn all this, you know. I flew for the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam, and we killed a lot of communists out there. It was sad. My concern is, as you know, America's going to war again. Because every time the economy goes bad, war starts. So that's what brought Hitler to power back in the early years, you know.
But do you think it's going to happen again?
We're already in it.
Can we explore it a bit? Because that's a bit fascinating to me. I mean, by the way, it's something I'm concerned about. Because when things are going bad for a political movement, let's start a war.
Yes, and you can print more money. I fought in Vietnam twice as a Marine, you know.
Yeah, it's very interesting about, you talk about institutionalized communism or Marxism, perhaps is a better way of putting it, and every version of Marxism. Today it's sort of watered down so you can't recognize it, but it is preeminent in education institutions, whether it's university
Marxist.
Or schools. Yeah.
Yep.
But they don't label it as Marxist. They sort of...
Liberal or
they have a different view on it. Well, let's look after everybody sort of thing. You know, we're going to look after you. How is that in America, and why does everybody cop it? Why do you put up with it?
Again, military school, a school in New York. I had nominations to Naval Academy, Merchant Marine Academy, Army, Air Force, and Coast Guard. And we were taught acta non verba, deeds, not words. So the lesson we were taught as military officers, watch what a person does, not what they say. So if you watch politicians, I don't care what party, watch what they do, not what they say. So the first thing, I'm not Republican or Democrat, the first thing Biden did was he cut the Keystone pipeline from Canada to America. And I'm an oil guy. I went to school, I worked for Standard Oil. I went to school to drive oil tankers for Standard Oil. And the price, I was selling oil under Trump for $30 a barrel. The moment Biden came to office and cut that pipeline, oil went to 130 US. I knew exactly what he's going to do. He wants to create a gap between rich and poor. And that's revolution. As you know, it takes that gap to cause revolution.
Division,
yeah. Anger. So America is a very divided, angry country right now, and they can't figure out what's happening. You know, why did Biden cut the pipeline? He didn't have to. The second thing, he just opened our borders and 10 million people streamed across. Watch what a person does, not what they say. So there's so much goofy stuff going on in America. We're so divided right now. It's not safe. It's not good.
Somebody else, perhaps Kennedy. How big a threat is he to both Biden and to Trump?
Well, Bobby Kennedy's a good man. Nobody owns him. And he wrote about this COVID thing and all this. He wrote against Fauci. Big Pharma runs the world, so do the banks, as you know.
Yeah.
So Bobby Kennedy is like his family. You can't buy them. I like Bobby Kennedy. And it's not Republican or Democrat. I just was somebody whose actions speak louder than words. And so Bobby Kennedy took on Big Pharma, which is good. My concern, you know, as Stalin said years ago, he says, it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. But America's a bad habit of taking out the Kennedys. So they're messing with power and the banking powers, you know, the cartels. The Federal Reserve Bank is not an American bank. It's a cartel of the richest banks in the world. You don't play their game, they stomp on you. So that's my concern. You know, money is power, like it or not.
What do we do about that?
My idea way back when was educate yourself. I learned investing playing Monopoly. And Maria Montessori, you know, she's one of the great educational entrepreneurs. She said, what the hand does, the mind remembers. So in school, I sat there, words went in one ear, out the other, you know, just said nothing. And that was my poor dad, lecture, talk. Whereas my rich dad taught me about investing playing Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, Red Hotel. So today I own 10,000 rental units and 3 hotels. You know, I also invest in Bitcoin, I use debt, and I use all that. Everything school doesn't teach you. So when I saw your CV, you know, with mortgages and all that, that's essential. But you're messing with fire. It's the golden rule. Who has the gold makes the rule.
the depth of their resources, both money-wise, but intellectually, but also data. I mean, their data resources are outrageous, what they know about you. If you're a customer of somebody, a big bank or a big pharma or a big telco, they know everything about your life.
Yep.
They know what you do, where you go, how much you spend, how often, what on, how many times you go to the casino, online casino, gamble. And as this cash disappears, your behaviours, our behaviours become much more available for others to collect data on. Where do you see us going with all this stuff, Robert? Like, I feel like it's closing in on all of us and we can't stop it. Marxism is not only about making sure that no one owns anything, but in fact, we don't even own our own dignity. We will lose all our privacy.
Correct. Well, I think it was inevitable it was going to happen, that money would go crypto. I think I have 70 Bitcoin.
Crypto is good. I'm talking about when banks won't let you deal in cash.
No, that's what I'm saying is I'm getting off the banking system. So I own a lot of gold and silver, things like that. So I don't want anything they can print. So I own stocks, but at my company, I took them public. And my goal was to take companies public on New York, NASDAQ, and Toronto Stock Exchange. I got New York, I got Toronto Stock Exchange. This summer I go public on NASDAQ. So I control the paper, but I'm an entrepreneur. You know, that's trained to do this stuff. Take control of your life. And if you can control your money, you control your life. Years ago, I read a book by R. Buckminster Fuller. It was in '74, Gross Universal Cash Ice. Simply said, your wealth is stolen via your money. So the harder you work for money, more tax you pay, inflation. You put it in the bank, inflation steals it, fees, all that. I'm not against it. I'm saying wake up.
Should I buy Bitcoin today? Bitcoin's at record highs at the moment, again. Should I buy these cryptocurrencies? Should I start to step into these environments? When should they invest in these environments? At the height of the market, or is the market going to continue to grow? Or should they seek another one? Like perhaps they should look at Ethereum or some other currency that's cheaper. Should young people approach these markets?
Well, it's very simple. You've got to choose your education. You know, if you listen to a financial planner like a super person, they can put you in stocks and bonds are crashing. You know, it used to be bonds were considered safe. Today, they're the most dangerous assets you can put your money into. The S&P 500 is at all-time highs. And my generation, the boomer generation, is getting ready to retire. You know this little cartoon character, Lucy in Peanuts? And so Lucy would hold the football like this, and Charlie would run up and she'd pull the ball away. I think they're going to do that to the boomers. They're going to steal our pensions. They're already stealing it. So the American baby boom generation is a 50-50 chance won't retire. All they got is their house now, most of them. But homelessness is on the increase. Not bad here yet. But look at San Francisco, the most beautiful cities on earth, very much like Sydney. People are homeless all over the place. They can't afford a house. I went to see it myself. It's terrible. It's spreading all across America. Well, there's no financial education in America. You look at our leaders, you know, most of the people who run our Federal Reserve Bank and our government, they're PhDs, like my poor dad. PhD stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. This guy Bernanke, you know, Fed chairman, when it crashed, he dropped interest rates to zero and printed trillions. So today, America's in this huge bubble. There's cash sitting everywhere. Stock market's in a bubble, real estate's in a bubble, and all this. How much longer can it go? Today, America's the #1 debtor nation in the world. Every 90 days, they're printing another $1 trillion to cover the shortfall. They're printing more money because our taxes don't cover our expenses. They're printing $1 trillion every 90 days.
Wow.
And then you look at China. Evergrande went down and Market Garden went down. China's going bankrupt, and so is Germany. So, you know, as I say, when America sneezes, Aussie gets pneumonia. And so we're the lucky country, but the world is caving in around you guys. So that's the spooky part. So that's why I say to everybody, buy some silver. You know, silver's about $20. It used to be 50. And then I like Bitcoin because Bitcoin gets stronger, dollar gets weaker.
This is a correlation.
Yeah, so I own I think 60 Bitcoin or something, not much, but you know, I was buying it at 6,000. It's better that than losing it, you know.
But given that you're sitting on a profit, would you consider cashing it in and taking your profit off the table now?
Well, you're a banker. I borrow against assets.
And can you borrow against your Bitcoin?
Of course I can.
Yep.
I say gold and silver are God's money because God put it here. But Bitcoin is people's money. That's the blockchain technology. And blockchain technology is basically a ledger, you know, a financial statement. And I'm afraid I don't have any proof of this, but they'll use central bank money to surveil you. That's what China does. So they know what you're spending your money on. If you're buying too many drugs, they'll come after you. You're doing this. So they're going to use our money as a surveillance tool. I'm afraid of that. So that's why I own tons of silver coins. So if push comes to a shove, I'll come pay you in silver. I was a pilot in Vietnam. It was in '72, and Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So my rich dad said, watch out, the world's going to change. So I said, how's it going to change? So I flew behind enemy lines. Marines are not the brightest guys on earth. Let's go buy some gold. He said, yeah, but it's enemy lines. He says, we'll be in and out very quick. So my co-pilot and I, we're not smart guys. We walk up to the gold window. We're in a village. People are staring, what the hell are these guys doing here? We disarmed, no weapons, walked in. So we come as capitalists, not Marines, I'm talking to this little Vietnamese woman with red teeth. And I think gold was, let's say, $50. I tried to give her 30 for it. And she looked at me and went, spot. I went, what? I said, 30. Spot. I didn't know what spot meant. I said, I got a spot in my shirt or something. And she was talking about gold is the same price throughout the world. That little Vietnamese woman, I don't think she went to Harvard. She was teaching me the best lessons of all. So we came home empty-handed, and I flew then to Hong Kong, and I bought my first gold Kruger Rand. $50 I paid for it. I still have that Kruger Rand today.
Oh, wow.
And it's now worth $2,200. So the Kruger Rand didn't change in size, but the dollar came down, And your financial statement is what your banker wants to see. Your banker doesn't care what your report card says. So I can borrow a lot of money because I have strong financials, as you know. If I have bad financials, you give me a credit card.
Yeah, and I'll charge you more.
Yeah, this is your greatest asset, greatest liability. Two most important words in business.
Cash flow totally is.
Which way is it flowing, in or out? You want it flowing in. Well, I think the problem with Trump, he's got guts,
He definitely does.
And he stepped on a lot of toes, bankers. They don't like him. Bobby Kennedy, John Kennedy, they got taken out. So even if he's elected, his life is more in danger than. It's hard to stand up to the banking system. But when they weaponize the FBI and the court system against the man, that's fascism. They take our court system and go after him. So America's in serious, serious trouble. Serious trouble. That's why he got taken out, He said, I'm going to drain the swamp. He's talking about the central banks, the swamp. They're all in cahoots.
What hope is there for the US?
Well, I always say, put yourself on your own gold standard or silver standard. Educate yourself. We're going in for a rough ride. Let me say it again. China is in serious financial trouble. America is the biggest debtor nation in the world, printing $1 trillion every 90 days. Germany's in bankruptcy. But if you're hoping the government's going to save you, then you're in trouble.
In 2016, I sat opposite Trump and I interviewed him. And he said to me, one of the things he's concerned about is Australia's trading relationship with China.
Yeah.
He said, let me tell you something. Yeah, they'll take all your iron ore and everything else that you're selling, coal, etc., that you're selling to them. He said, but ultimately you'll end up owing them something. You've got to do something about that. Because the biggest owner of the debt in the United States is China. Today, I would say it's quite courageous, but sort of accurate. It's all come to roost now.
Yep.
8 years later, it's all come to roost.
Yep.
We now have this problem.
Yep.
And China's falling apart economically as well. It sounds like we could be in globally for some other crisis.
Correct.
What it's called, I don't know. It won't be a GFC, maybe a financial crisis, who knows? Because the value of their paper, the Chinese paper that it holds in relation to American debt,
Correct.
is not worth anywhere near what it was issued at.
Correct.
And China needs as much as they can possibly get because they've got a bit of a few problems internally themselves. Are you sort of not predicting, but suggesting there could be a crisis on its way?
There is one. We're in it right now.
We're in it now.
Well, Xi, his mandate, he's going to take Taiwan back.
So create a war, solve the problem.
Yeah, that's war, And so what's going on in Ukraine and all this, it's terrible. I hate war. I just hate it. I fought twice in Vietnam, killed a lot of people. But it's about money, as you know. It's a very dangerous time on earth, so it's important that everybody take responsibility for yourselves financially, not expect the government to take care of you. Save gold, silver, or Bitcoin, and protect yourself now with your brain, But don't expect the government to take care of you. You sit behind these superpowers going to war, and it's spooky.
Do you think war is inevitable?
Well, historically, yes. See, what brought Hitler to power was the Weimar Republic when World War I, and they made Germany pay reparations. So Germany went bankrupt. Hitler came to power. So every time there's chaos, a dictator comes to power. So that was fascist, that was Mussolini and Hitler. These are not normal times. But I don't know. I would just prepare.
Economically prepare. You're not sort of suggesting be doomsdayer and go and hunker down and build a vault underneath your house and fill it up with cans of baked beans and water, etc. Just
watch historically. You're in the banking business. 2019, the repo market collapsed. That's where the banks go to borrow money. It collapsed. And then suddenly, COVID appeared. I went, oh, is this an accident?
That's interesting.
Interesting, because you watch this stuff. Is there a coincidence?
It means if I'm a bank and I've got mortgage assets, if I've got a pool of mortgages, which are my assets, and I've got liabilities where I've borrowed money from depositors on the other side if I'm a bank, repo means that I can go to the government will buy my mortgages off me for the face value of the mortgage. So if I lend Robert $100,000 and there's 10,000 of Roberts in my pool and I need some cash to lend more money to more Roberts, but I'm running out of cash because I'm a bank, because I'm not receiving the deposits, then I can go to the government and the government runs a repo program where they will take my mortgages off me In your case, they put him in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and they'll give us cash for it
Yep.
as the bank, and then we'll go lend some more money. And the repo market, you're saying, in 2019, prior to COVID,
Went down.
collapsed. So there wasn't as much liquidity in the system, but liquidity being money available for the banking system.
Correct.
Because what you just said to me is really interesting, because when COVID hit, within 4 months, our central bank here cut a check of $190 billion to our banking system. They said, banks, here's $190 billion. We'll give you to a 0.1%, fixed for 3 years.
Yeah.
Go lend it. And of course, that created inflation and the bubble.
Yeah.
The property market
Yeah.
bubble. It just went off. And then, of course, last year, the government said, well, we want that repaid because the 3 years is up, 2023.
Yeah.
Now the banks are raising money at 6%. So our interest rates are higher. You know who's suffering? The consumer.
The average guy.
The guy borrowed money 3 years, all of a sudden he's gone from fixed 1.99, now he's paying 7%. Our consumers are paying for this. The banks are making the same amount of profit as they've
Yep.
always made. They're just charging the borrower more.
Yep.
And the way forward was, we're going to put interest rates up.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now the consumer's bearing the risk of this. You know, it's really interesting. I remember Milton Friedman. I remember watching him in the 90s, and it's up on YouTube these days, Friedman. He says, consumers never create inflation. Governments do.
Correct. They print
Never.
money.
They print money and then make it available for
the rich.
system. Yeah. And the only people who make money out of that is the rich people at the end of the day. I think what you're sort of saying is, be like the rich guys.
Yeah. Think like my rich dad, not my poor
Yeah,
dad.
learn from the rich dad. And I think what you're sort of saying here, and it's quite compelling, is no point fighting against the machine. I mean, you can storm the White House or whatever you want to do, but that's not going to do anything at the end of the day. The system will close you down.
Yeah. Educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
Right. It's easier to do something for other people. Give and you shall receive. When you do it for other people, stuff comes in. But if you're just taking for yourself, who cares? You know, you're greedy. And that's a big, big difference there. And if we don't educate ourselves, then shame on us. But schools will not do it because schools are complicit with the banks. They're Marxist. And I respect the freedom of choice. You can be a Marxist, you can be a capitalist. But without financial education, as you know in the banking industry, if you don't have any financial education, you can't be a capitalist. As my rich dad taught me, it says your banker never asks you for your report card. Your bank wants to see your financials. The other thing about financial literacy is, do you speak the language of money? So when I hear guys throwing on EBITDA and this, I go, no, it's just how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. What's an asset? Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money from your pocket. If you change your vocabulary, you change your life. That's how powerful words are. But they don't teach you the language of money. They don't teach you taxes at school. In Trump, they don't pay taxes legally. If you know what you're doing, you don't have to pay taxes. See, the more debt I use, debt became money in 71 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. The more debt I use, more tax breaks I get.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you and I don't borrow money, as you know, the economy crashes. So we have to have people borrowing money for the economy to keep growing. So that's why they keep raising interest rates. People can't borrow money. Meanwhile, your population's increasing. People can't afford to live here now. I think it's up to every individual to take control of their own finances, their own financial statement, and don't expect the government to take care of you. That's very liberal, which is kind. But, you know, I was taught you teach a man a fish, you feed him for life. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. And socialism wants to give people fish and makes the problem bigger and worse.
Instead of teaching them how to fish.
Yeah. How do you manage a financial statement? Your financial statement is a report card when you leave school. Think like a rich person, like a capitalist.
Yeah.
And teach your kids.
Yeah.
And teach your kids.
Yeah.
And teach